Our first hybrid meeting where we have the ability to be virtual or in person. All the board members are present. We will have to do roll call because it is a hybrid meeting. And so when I call your name, please just indicate that you are here. Also, due to COVID, we are maintaining wearing masks and keeping our physical distance to 6 feet apart, and monitoring to make sure everybody's in. That you can see we have guests signed into the meeting. And with that, if we can turn it over to Mr. Burkett.
Okay, for our safety instructions.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being flexible with us based on the governor's direction. I know this is short notice about the 10 limit, but appreciate you working with us on that. If the fire alarm should activate, we'll go right down the hall to the stairwell, either one, to the left or to the right. When you exit out the building, we'll meet right over here at Granby and Main, basically right on the other side where Norfolk Printing used to be. All right, and so Kate, if you don't mind, just getting the head count so we make sure we got everybody there. Of course, if you have a problem, don't hesitate to dial 911. For any fire or medical emergency, I'll be right in my office, so come get me and I'll help address it. But there's a first aid kit at Janet's desk. And also right down the hallway, right outside the store, there's a fire extinguisher and an AED. Okay, so anyway, so we'll be able to take care of medical emergency, those type of things. And remember our blue light system that's here mounted in the overhead, if that's flashing, there's no audible. It just indicates that there's some type of threat going on this floor. So before you leave, get a situational awareness. It might be safer to shelter in place than it is leaving the boardroom. Okay? So any questions? All right, thank you. Enjoy your meeting.
Thank you.
Anytime.
And Madam Chair, if I may call roll.
Yes.
And please speak into your microphone so those joining us virtually can hear. Mr. Boehm.
I'm here.
Captain Callis.
I'm here.
Captain Chisman.
Here.
Captain Collins.
Here.
Mr. Host.
Here.
Mr. McDermott.
Here.
Captain Avery.
Here.
Ms. Parasol.
Here.
And Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Everybody's accounted for.
Do we need to roll call on the?
We have Christine and Elizabeth. Can you hear us?
Mary and Elizabeth.
Hang on here. Mary has her microphone off.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth, are you on the call? And Frank Rubina's on the call, but he's here as a guest and he has his line muted. The unknown, Elizabeth, are you the unknown? Or
I
is that
believe I am. If you can hear me,
Mark?
this is Mark
Okay,
Coberly.
Thank you, Mark. Did you plan on making public comment?
No, I did not.
Okay, if you would just, if you would not mind muting your microphone so we don't have background noise. And Frank, unless you unmute and say so, I'm assuming you're just observing and you did not want to make comment today?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. I'm just here observing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It does not look like Elizabeth is on the call yet, Madam Chair, but we have a quorum of the board.
Okay, all right. So moving on to the next item, can I get approval of the agenda? The motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have to do that by roll call, unfortunately. And I'm sorry, it's just going to be, we'll hit our stride. Mr. Boehm?
Aye.
Captain Callis?
Aye.
Captain Chisman?
Aye.
Captain Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Host?
Aye.
Mr. McDermott?
Aye.
Mr. Avery?
Aye.
Ms. Parasol?
Aye.
Mr. Coleman?
All right. The next is for the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
All right, let's take a vote.
Miss-
Madam Chairman, I noticed a typo in the minutes. small, but on page 7, and I think through 9, the motor tanker Chem Antares is referred to as the MIT Chem Antares.
I see it.
Thank you.
Good.
I was twice, a few times.
Next 2 pages.
Okay, with the modification, can we take a vote?
We have, as modified, Captain Avery made the motion, Captain Collins second, Mr. Bain,
Aye.
Captain Collis,
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Host,
Aye.
Mr. McDermott,
Aye.
Captain Avery,
Aye.
Ms. Parasol,
Aye.
and Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right, moving along, public comment period. As our guest indicated, they were not planning to.
That is correct, and we had no one else join the call, so there's no public comment.
All right, with that, I'm going to move to the exam administrator's report. Captain Callis.
All right. The examining committee met at 8:30 in the Virginia International Terminals Conference, or actually the Waterside Room, excuse me, this morning. And committee members present were Captain Robert H. Callis III, Captain J.W. Whiting Chisholm III, Captain E. Wasteful Avery, and Captain January N. Collins. The meeting was called to order at 8:30. It says 8 o'clock on there, so we'll update that. And the purpose of the meeting was to examine Zachary Stewart Dodson for a raise and grade from an Alpha license, which is 25,000 gross tons and 28 feet maximum draft, to a Bravo license, which is 34,000 gross tons and 31 feet maximum draft. Zachary Stewart Dodson answered all questions related to the raise and grade. The subjects included safe anchoring positions in Lynn Haven, Sewell's Point, and Newport News, efficient use of bow and stern thrusters and docking and undocking situations, proper use of ship's navigation equipment, anchoring light draft vessels in adverse weather, air draft calculations, vessel traffic management, CAPMA, the port orders, marine safety information bulletins, and regulated navigation area boundaries. Northeast sea lane limitations, current marine construction and dredging projects, and safe vessel speed. And the examining committee adjourned at 9:50 this morning. And after considering the results of the examination, the examining committee recommends Zachary Stewart Dodson for a Bravo license. And that is a motion.
Can I get? All right, let's take a vote.
Mr. Bain,
Aye.
Captain Callis,
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Host,
Aye.
Mr. McDermott,
Aye.
Captain Avery,
Aye.
Ms. Parasol,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right. So it's December, so we have our license renewals. In your packet, we have a letter from Captain Trimble with some unfortunate news. Do you have a motion, Captain Avery?
Would you like me to start with, we'll save him for last,
Are you want to do that? Okay, go ahead.
if that's okay.
That's fine.
So first, before I get started, if it's okay, we're required to appear before, the pilots for their renewal are required to appear before the committee or the board. So I want to thank Captain Frank Rabina and the staff of the Virginia Pilot Association for setting up a protocol for the 41 pilots to come through and to appear in person in front of the committee and keep everyone safe. So they set up a situation where we could stay as far apart as possible while still exchanging papers back and forth. So I want to thank Frank
Good job.
for that. So the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee met December 7th and 8th, 2020. The members of the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee have reviewed the renewal applications for the 2021 calendar year and present the following report. Following branch pilots are presented for renewal: Christopher H. Boehm, Charles I. Boggs Jr., Robert H. Callis III, Julian with Whiting Chisholm III, January N. Collins, Ernest W. Dodson Jr., Milton D. Edmonds, Michael S. Eubanks, Mark S. Evans, Tazwell Fitzgerald, N. Turner Gray Jr., Herbert R. Green III, Nathaniel T. Green II, Adam L. Alstead, Kevin D. Hartz, C. Howard Hoffman, Richard Keith Hope, Charles A. Huffman, Chadwick M. Jameson, Jacob R. Johnson, Richard A. Lyons, Joseph R. McNew, Ryan R. Neenstedt, Timothy D. Oaksman, Frank M. Rabina Jr., Torrance A. Rogers, William G. Saunders Jr., Joseph M. Shakara III, G. Benjamin Schill Jr., Benjamin L. Speckert, Gregory R. Wilson, Jonathan D. Worth, and Clarence M. Young. The members of the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee viewed the renewal application paperwork and deemed the individuals qualified pursuant to Section 54.1-906 of the Code of Virginia, and that is a motion to approve the renewal applications of the unlimited licensees. So I think, Mr. Bain, you would abstain from?
Absolutely. Christopher H. Bay.
Yes, sir.
Let the minutes reflect. Please.
Captain Callis? You would abstain from voting on your license as well?
That's correct.
And Captain Chisholm?
That's correct. I abstain from my license.
I abstain from my license.
And that is a motion.
And you would abstain from yours.
Not yet. I come.
Oh, you're not on there, okay.
No, ma'am.
I'll second.
Actually, can I abstain from Charles Huffman?
So we have a request for a waiver. The members of the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee moves.
Wait,
I'm
let's
sorry.
vote on this.
We have, I believe it was Mr. McDermott that made the motion to accept.
No.
Was that you? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Coleman. Is there a second?
I'll second. Actually,
No,
Captain
technically, I'm
Avery
sorry.
motion.
I made the motion. Mr. Coleman seconded.
Okay. Thank you. And now to go down the list, Mr. Boehm,
Aye.
Captain Callis,
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Host,
Aye.
Mr. McDermott,
Aye.
Captain Avery,
Aye.
Ms. Parasol,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
It's unanimous,
With the exception of the,
as indicated for the minutes. Yes, sir.
Okay,
the members of the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee moves to waive the requirements of subsection C.3 of Regulation 18 VAC 45-20-20 pursuant to subsection C.4 of Regulation 18 VAC 45-20-20 from Hopewell to Richmond upon the James River for the following branch pilot, David B. Ware. And that is a motion.
Second.
Okay.
let's take a vote.
Going down the list, Mr. Boehm,
Aye.
Captain Collins,
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Callis,
Aye.
Mr. Host,
Aye.
Mr. McDermott,
Aye.
Captain Avery,
Aye.
Ms. Parasol,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Members of the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee moves to waive the requirements of subsection C.3 of Regulation 18 VAC 45-20-20 pursuant to subsection C.4 of Regulation 18 VAC 45-20-20 from Wolf Trap to Washington DC upon the Potomac River for the following branch pilots: E. Waitstill Avery, William G. Diggs, David H. Heath, Dale A. Meyer Jr., and Roy A. Rector. And that is a motion.
Second.
A motion was made by Captain Avery, the second by Mr. Beam.
And I abstain from voting on my license.
Captain Avery abstains, and going down the list, Mr. Beam.
Aye.
Captain Callis.
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Collins.
Aye.
Mr. Host.
Aye.
Mr. McDermott.
Aye.
Captain Avery.
Aye.
Ms. Pearsall.
Aye.
And Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Bless you.
So my next motion is based on a letter from Captain Trimble. It's in the packet. Hopefully, most of you had a chance to read it. Unfortunately, Jim is battling cancer and is unable to work right now. So he's hoping he can get clear before March 14th. And I think the plan is we can approve his license based on him getting a fit for duty from his physician. So the members of the Board for Branch Pilots Renewal Committee moves to renew the license of Branch Pilot James S. Trimble upon receipt and confirmation of medical clearance, and at such time to waive the requirements of subsection C.3, Regulation 18 BAC 45-20-20 pursuant to subsection C.4 of Regulation 18 BAC 45-20-20 from Wolf Trap to Washington, D.C. upon the Potomac River, and that is a motion.
I'll second it.
Captain Avery made the motion. Mr. Host seconded it. And taking roll, Mr. Beam.
Aye.
Captain Callis.
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Collins.
Aye.
Mr. Host.
Aye.
Mr. McDermott.
Aye.
Captain Avery.
Aye.
Ms. Pearsall.
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Madam President, may I make one comment about the license renewals?
Sure.
In regards to the waivers for the Potomac River, just to make the board aware and also back to, reported to the board back in 2015, we have not had traffic on the Potomac River to Alexandria in the last couple of years. And so it is something we've been working with Coast Guard about licensing on the Potomac River, and the letter that we submitted to the board for branch pilots back in 2015 also reflected the problem currently with licensing on the Potomac River so far as there's just simply no traffic on the Potomac River. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board for the waivers on the Potomac River. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thank you.
And I have one more.
Okay.
The following limited branch pilot license was also presented for renewal. Zachary Stewart Dotson. The members of the Board for Branch Pilots License Renewal Committee reviewed the renewal application paperwork and deemed this individual qualified pursuant to Section 54.1-906 of the Code of Virginia. And that is a motion for the limited license.
That for his Bravo license?
That's how it's written on his license. It's for the Bravo.
Can I get a second?
Second it.
All right.
Mr. Boehm.
Aye.
Captain Collins.
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Callis.
Aye.
Mr. Host.
Aye.
Mr. McDermott.
Aye.
Captain Avery.
Aye.
Ms. Pearsall.
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Captain Avery, are we, anything else?
That concludes the report from the renewal committee.
Great, thank you, and thank you for working on that for those 2 days. And thank you, Captain Rabina and everybody out at the branch pilots for making it a safe renewal this year in
Yes,
challenging
and
times.
point out that Captain Collins was instrumental in helping as well.
Well, thank you, Captain Collins. Biennial report, Captain Chisholm,
That was just information.
Okay.
that we had to gather for our, the agency's Diana report, and I just thought that the board might be interested in that information. So it's just informational.
Okay. All right. Review of the Virginia Pilot Association's Apprenticeship Training Program, Learning Resource Modification. Now, Captain Chisholm, did you want to address this?
Yes, Madam President, as in your board package, to renew the pilot apprenticeship with the Board for Branch Pilots, we would like the board to consider one modification to the apprenticeship. And that is to add the introductory chart sketch of the chart 12208. To move that objective up to the first week of the apprenticeship. Presently, in the apprenticeship, this chart is drawn at the 18-month exam. And with the addition of the 12-week pre-apprenticeship training program, where the apprentices begin the apprenticeship and go immediately to launch duty for those 12 weeks of the pre-apprenticeship, the apprentice committee believes it would be a good start to the apprenticeship where they were given the opportunity to study and draw this chart. So when they begin their apprenticeship on September 15th, they'll have the opportunity to draw it 1 week after the start of their apprenticeship. And if they successfully complete it, then the objective is met and will not be done at 18-month exam. And also if they're not successful after that first attempt, after the first week of the apprenticeship, they'll be given a second attempt at week 3. And the same thing applies. Either they complete the objective at the first week or the third week, or it goes off to the 18-month exam. And that's the only modification that we have for our apprenticeship program, for the board's apprenticeship program, I should say. Are there any questions? It may seem a little confusing, but we believe that it's a good way for them to start.
All right, any discussion?
And that being said, so we would need 2 motions, one to accept the modification to the apprenticeship program, and then after that's approved, then the renewal of for 2021, the approval of the apprenticeship.
Okay. So can I get a motion to modify the apprenticeship program?
I'll make a motion, we modify the program as described.
And the second?
I'll second it.
All right.
Okay, Captain Callis made the motion. Captain Collins seconded the motion. All in favor, Mr. Beam?
Aye.
Captain Callis?
Aye.
Captain Chisholm?
Aye.
Captain Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Host?
Aye.
Mr. McDermott?
Aye.
Captain Avery?
Aye.
Ms. Pearsall?
Aye.
Mr. Coleman?
Aye.
All right. And then on the second motion for the new board members, so the board is responsible for the training, and we've delegated that authority to the Virginia Pilot Association, but every year we have a renewal of that delegation. So can I have a motion to delegate the training through the Virginia Apprenticeship Program to the Virginia Pilots Association for another year?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Mr. Beam made the motion. Mr. Host seconded it. All in favor, Mr. Beam?
Aye.
Captain Callis?
Aye.
Captain Chisholm?
Aye.
Captain Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Host?
Aye.
Mr. McDermott?
Aye.
Captain Avery?
Aye.
Ms. Pearsall?
Aye.
Mr. Coleman?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
All right. Next item, review of regulations.
This is another item that we do annually where our AG, our council reviews our regulations to make sure we are in compliance. Ms. P sends her regrets that she is unable to join the meeting virtually today. So I would ask if we can table this to our March meeting.
And hopefully by March, there's several items you might want to table to March too, and I think this is one. So can we get a motion to table this until March?
So moved.
A second? All right.
I'm sorry, who was first? Thank you.
Dermot and then Callis.
Okay, Mr. McDermott made the motion, Captain Callis seconded the motion. Going down the roll call, Mr. Boehm.
Aye.
Captain Callis.
Aye.
Captain Chisholm.
Aye.
Captain Collins.
Aye.
Mr. Host.
Aye.
Mr. McDermott.
Aye.
Captain Avery.
Aye.
Ms. Pearsall.
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Unanimously passes, Madam Chair.
All right, the next one is we've received a notification letter from Captain Edmonds. Ms. Noshfish, can you give us an update?
Certainly. We received word from Jonathan Darden, Director of In-House Investigations at DPOR, that the Coast Guard has requested to meet with Investigator Ernie Atkins tomorrow. And so we have no new information to report at this time. Mr. Darden thought that after the meeting, Investigator Atkins would be able to provide the board with a report of what occurred. The findings have not been made public yet, so we don't have access to that. So my recommendation would be, as we've done with other notification letters when we needed more information, if the board wishes to consider postponing that until the March meeting when we have more information.
Madam President, how did we get to this investigation stage from where we were? Or we received the letters, but how did we move past the board review into an investigation scenario?
If I may,
Can you all hear me?
I'm unmuted, yes?
Yes.
Great. The agency initiated the investigation based on the notification from the Pilot Association.
I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Oh, gosh. I'm not sure what I can do to amplify. I'll speak louder. Is that better?
Hold on, let's see.
There we go. There we go.
Hold on. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, is that better? Am I screaming at you now?
It's better.
It's better though? Okay, good. The agency initiated the investigation based on the notification from the Pilot Association as well as the news reports in order to make sure that, no facts slipped away, which obviously pursuant to the agency's authority is incumbent upon it.
I know, Mary, this is Vince again. I know you made that kind of blanket statement at the last meeting, and I think you referred to 54.1, Chapter 3. And certainly I'm not an attorney, but
That makes two of us.
I'm sorry?
That makes two of us.
Okay. I can't see that that DPOR has the authority to authorize an investigation. And in fact, it was kind of troublesome to me. I took the time to read 18 years of minutes of this body. I guess I probably would have read more, but that's all that's on the internet. And in fact, in every case, up until 2 cases this year, the Border Branch Pilots was the entity to initiate investigation. So certainly the precedents had been set up until this year.
Would you like, do you have the code in front of you? Do you want me to cite the particular statutory authority?
6, that's what I got.
I'm sorry?
I said, if you've got 304 and 306, that's what I got.
54.1-306. Yes, sir.
Mhm. Has the authority to investigate, but what has happened in a practical standpoint in the past is the board of branch pilots would vote to have the matter investigated, and then you guys took off and did the investigation.
Well, in fact, the board cannot direct the investigation. It would be contrary to the APA.
No, I misspoke. The board authorizes DPOR to do the investigation. That's correct. The Board of Branch Pilots, obviously, our vote at the end of the whole process will be tainted. But
Yeah, the board powers and duties in Chapter 2 are enumerated, and those don't actually include the authority to investigate. Though, of course, we work to have a cooperative relationship in that regard. We do need to ensure that investigative authority remains appropriately delineated to protect the board.
I don't understand that, but I would like a little bit more evidence as to how and why DPOR can initiate an investigation without the approval of this board. Because like I said, for the last 18 years, up until this year, the board has authorized DPOR to investigate.
Perhaps would something in writing from council help alleviate your concerns?
Yeah, make sure you send it to Pat and Mike. To make
Well,
sure.
I would certainly mean in response to the board as a whole.
Sure. Because the way I read the code, the only way you can initiate an investigation is that the board has authorized you to do it. Not you individually.
No, sir, and I'm not taking it personally,
Right.
of course. And I think what we have is a misunderstanding of the Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 authorities.
Well, that's entirely possible, but from a practical standpoint, what's happened this year has not been the model for the previous 18 or 17 years.
And so if I could jump in, I'd be curious I'm interested to get clarification on that too, because I read I think later in our conversation, we'll talk about the chain for initiating an investigation. And there was comment about the director's authority under the code to initiate an investigation on DPOR's own volition. And it wasn't clear to me. My reading of the code and specifically about the Board for Branch Pilots is that it is this board's responsibility to investigate, and this board's responsibility to license, and this board's responsibility to determine if violations occur. So it seems to me like there's maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but I would appreciate receiving some clarification on it also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this Tom host, but I'll just say that, this type of event that happened over the years. Normally speaking, I think we've had these incidents happen, and thank God there hadn't been any damage to the vessels or any pollution or anything like that. But I like the idea of being able to kind of follow a protocol, especially on something like, a grounding, being able to look back and see what we've, how we've dealt with these in the past. Because a lot of times things in the past dictate how we're performing for the future events.
Yeah, just to dovetail on what Tom just said, in the last 18 years, there's been 16 groundings, none of which had damage, most of which were in the James River. And this board has investigated one incident back in 2005. And that incident was investigated, in my opinion, reading between the lines of the minutes, was because there was a lot of tug and barge traffic, and the pilot um, ran the ship aground to avoid, I think, possibly a catastrophe. So investigating this incident with Captain Edmonds is very unusual. No damage, no other ships involved, no other ships around, I don't think. So
Hi, Mary, this is Captain Callis speaking. As Deepwater views incidents like this now, could you tell us what is the threshold that is the decision whether to conduct an investigation? What do you perceive, or is there certain requirements that start Deepwater to investigating an incident?
Yes, sir. Certainly, this incident, the inquiries, the news reports helped assist us in wishing to go ahead and initiate an investigation to ensure that any facts that were being collected didn't get away. And perhaps even investigation is a strong word, but it's the correct word within the statutory authority. It's certainly not meant to suggest that we wouldn't always confer with and inform the board. But the last thing we would want to do, as I said, in order to protect the board, is taint the board or otherwise how to say, what I'm, obviously hearing is concern about, some sort of usurping of authority.
Well, what did this Captain Callis again? I'm curious to know about the press report, or the lack of a press report would determine whether there's an investigation or not. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, a press report is certainly one way in which we would learn about most instances. Otherwise, notification letters or the pilot association letting us know helps inform and guide that sort of decision.
Madam President.
Yes.
Mrs. Broadsvon, this is Whiting Chisholm. If I may go over some of the issues with when the notification letter, or rather not the notification letter, but after the incident, to follow in line with what was, I believe, the will of the board after our last June meeting with the complaint process that was discussed. When I was informed about the incident, the next morning I informed the president that something had happened, and then I think it was later in the day that it was on the news. And thus, as the president and I were the complaint committee, we discussed on Monday after the event, because the event occurred on Wednesday night. After that, the president and I agreed, as the, for lack of a better way to say it, the complaint committee, I guess, determined that an investigation needed to be started. So we did make that decision. However, we did learn that we had been preempted by the department, which I believe this investigation began on Friday. And so when you get the legal opinion, I think I agree that the director has the authority to investigate under 54.1-306. However, I'm not sure that it is being applied correctly to a situation like this, because I assume you're looking at paragraph A, where it says that the director or investigators appointed by him shall have the authority to investigate violations of the statutes and regulations that the director is required to enforce. And so the issue here is that after the board receives the notification letter, it needs to be determined if there's a violation. So I believe the way this is written is more in line with other boards that you regulate, where you have an inspector that may go and find a violation, and that gives the director the authority to investigate. Whereas with our board, where we get notification letters about what can be complex maritime issues, the board needs to determine through an investigation, which the president and I called, if there was a violation. And that's where I think that needs to be clarified, because I would say that the board does have to approve that there is going to be an investigation, not the department. Thank you.
Excuse me. This is the Board for Branch Pilots Board meeting. May I ask who just joined the call?
It doesn't matter, Kate.
So just to, with Whiting's, and I think let's move on from Captain Edmonds. I think we should go ahead and make a motion to table that to March, and then we can talk about the complaint process, because I think there are some more underlying issues that we need to deal with about whether something is a complaint or not a complaint, that we can have the authority to launch an investigation, and the reasoning behind the call in the middle of the night because there is something. And this was the same thing. It was a call, there was a grounding, it hit the press. And part of the reason, not so much as we thought there was a violation, but sending our own investigator in there to also protect the pilot in case there was some sort of finding by the Coast Guard. We wanted our independent investigators in there to preserve the evidence and to move quickly, and we should have that ability and not have something actually come in as a complaint. But I think let's make a motion about Captain Edmonds until we, and table that to March to further discussion, which we might have a report that says nothing was, just so that we have some evidence and there's no finding of, but I'd like to just table that till March till we have more information.
Madam President, I'd like to not make the motion that you are asking for. I'd like the letter to be filed with the board taking no action, as there appears to be no violation of the board's regulations or statutes, and this letter was informational in nature.
Do you have a second?
I'll second the motion.
And then we go down the list. Mr. Bain?
Aye.
Captain Callis?
Aye.
Captain Chisholm?
Nay.
Captain Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Host?
Aye.
Mr. McDermott?
Aye.
Captain Avery?
Aye.
Ms. Parasol?
Nay.
Mr. Coleman?
I abstain.
Motion carries.
All right, let's move on about the review of our regulatory complaint process. So there is, and Mary not being here is going to make this even more challenging, because I think there are things in my reading of this that we had not discussed before, like consent orders. In addition, I guess it now said notification or complaint received. So that's changed it, because that became an issue of whether or not. And I think part of the process, as we discuss the collision in the middle of the night, we get the call. Part of the emergency powers is let's send an investigator out there to preserve the evidence. That happened in this instance. D4 had already sent their people out. But then we were also notified that we didn't really have the authority to call an investigation. Our committee did not. So I don't want to be stuck in the middle of the night, not being able to call an investigation because a complaint hadn't come in yet because it was something that just happened the night before. And that became like semantics of whether or not the complaint was brought in or, so I don't know, we want to discuss this in March or we want to discuss it more here about what our authority as a board should be and our ability to call an investigation.
Well, Madam President, if I may, that at the bare minimum, I do think it needs to be clarified if there were to be another incident between now and March, that either we establish that there will be a phone call of the whole board to get the investigator moving, or that I don't remember what it's referenced in the packet, but the complaint committee, the file notification letter committee has the ability to put the investigator into motion. And it needs to be decided by this board. I agree, not the department. So whatever we need to do to affect that, I think we need to discuss.
Whitey, did I hear you say that, number one, the investigation committee has merit in that when a decision needs to be made quickly, you guys will make that decision and either call a special meeting or the like, but that's the extent of what you're saying. Is that correct?
Well, to go through the scenario back in September, we had discussed having a phone call of the board, and we're told that that was not possible because of public notice requirements.
And also so if there was something that arose to the level of the health and safety, we could have an emergency board meeting to summarily suspend. I think we're one of the few boards that are allowed to do that. However, if it's something not rising to that the more people that are aware of it, the more tainting there is involved. So the decision is a small committee to decide whether it or not an investigation is merited, which might come up with something without a violation, but whether or not something should be investigated or not.
And what was in the process here, I'm not sure I don't agree with the fact that there's the investigation committee so the president and the vice president, as we tried to do with the Hong Dai case, that we make a decision to investigate, but then if it's going to go further later, as it's written here, then the way I read it was that you and I would have to be recused, and then you have two other people go into the IFF. That doesn't make any sense to me. Because then you just knocked out 4 people.
If I may, and again, this is somewhat awkward from here, but there's a statutory requirement is why that's in there. The APA prohibits any individual who has served as an investigator, prosecutor, or advocator at any stage in a contested case from serving as a presiding officer in the IFF.
You understand that, sir, but does that mean that the first two, the investigation committee, they can't preside over an IFF, but then could they vote on as a board member after the IFF presents their report?
I have a question too.
Generally, no. I mean, we've been advised the answer to that, Captain Chisholm, is no.
This is Mike Coleman. I have a question about it. I'm confused a little bit about the tainting of someone involved in calling an investigation, because if you're calling Captain Chisholm and Ms. Pearsall to make a determination of whether an investigation is going to be launched, I don't know how they're included in the investigation, so that then they're tainted and not able to be a part of a tribunal to decide on the case. If all they're doing is saying, yes, proceed with an investigation, how are they a part of investigation, making themselves tainted?
Well, My first part of the answer would be to say it's not my saying so. It's the Administrative Process Act. But as it's been
Well,
explained
that's
to
what I mean. I don't see how, but what you just said on the Process Act, I just don't,
but the
they have to be a
thinking,
part of the investigation, right? So they have to be an investigator. They have to be tied to the situation that way. And I just don't see them saying, okay, it needs to be investigated as making them tainted, even under the act.
the due process argument, as it's been explained to me, is the concern that folks involved in the early onset of the case may be exposed to information that ends up not being in the final case presented to the board to act on. And if you have the benefit, let's say, of that additional information, the respondent is not afforded their due process, or may not be. And again, I am not by any means a legal scholar. I'm explaining how things have been explained to me as to why these.
And what I've read in this complaint process does seem to be very complicated. It eliminates people from sitting and voting as a board member on a case. And so I think that to get from point A to B is very simply, how does the board express its will to begin an investigation or an IFF? And that's something that confused me, because every incident that I'm aware of in my career here, an investigation was conducted as an IFF. And Christine and I had the discussion where that's a proceeding, there are the notification requirements and all this other matter. But at the end of the day, that's the way that it's happened that I'm aware of, to deploy an investigator to bring us the pertinent facts and then bring that back to either an IFF or whatever investigative process with the other members. I don't see where reading the notification letter that the board can't collectively make that decision.
Because the APA defines a case decision of the board as having occurred after an investigation that provides the potential respondent his or her due process.
Well, could I jump in?
Of course.
This is Vince again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, the board of branch pilot made a motion and authorized an IFF. One more, and for those of you who remember Beasley, the minutes reflect that the board authorized a full investigation, which I assume meant a formal investigation. The last 2 events this year, of course, the board did not authorize anything. That's all I got. It's inconsistent, I think, is what I'm hearing now.
This is Mike again. Mr. Vame had asked for an opinion, I think, on, what was it? You asked for another opinion, but I would like to get a legal opinion or just the context on how the board being made aware of an incident, which we all were aware of this particular incident, how being made aware of an incident and then saying that, yes, we want to authorize and order an investigation, the APA. I'll make that a motion, yeah.
I'll second the motion. This is Pat McDermott speaking. I'll second the motion that this board is requesting a legal opinion regarding the matters we've been discussing. I'd like to add a comment. There are boards across this Commonwealth that do not come under the Department of Professions and Occupational Regulation. Board of Health, the Virginia State Bar, and it is possible that of all the boards that DPOR supports, this is an odd one, respected. But I think because of the nature of the responsibilities of this board, as opposed to some of the other boards, and the very real threat of sudden emergency due to weather or other things beyond the control of the pilots, that this issue is worth of procedure and investigation is worth getting a legal opinion and having some further work. I'm not sure that a public session of the board is the place, not that I oppose the public nature of it, but it may be that we need a work session once legal opinion is received. Those people particularly interested in the matter, getting together with counsel, dealing with emergencies and the safety and the licensure of the pilots. And I think a good comprehensive legal opinion might help round off the edges of this square peg and make it a little better fit into the DPOR system. And that's why I've seconded the motion for a legal opinion as a starting place to work through these important issues.
Mr. McDermott, if I could amend the motion to the other point that I think, Mr. Graham, you brought up was in this review process that was presented to the board today in section B, the second item on section B indicated, and we talked about this already, process. Yeah, we talked about, and Captain Chisholm discussed it earlier, that when the committee met, that the investigation had already been ordered. I looked in the code and I didn't see that authority. I'd like to have an opinion on or explanation of where that is in the code specifically.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to offer, as soon as we're done with this, and I'm going to offer a motion on this receipt in just a few minutes. So, yeah, thank you.
So the two legal opinions would be specifically the tainting of the board, ordering an investigation, and then, which I described earlier. And the second would be where in the